Hello everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. Today we begin a new two-part series, Martin Luther King Jr. Day and the Civil Rights Movement ****. This is the story of a long fight for fairness, equality, and the right to be treated with respect. It tells how one man, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and many brave people worked together to change unfair laws in the United States. The holiday named after him is now a day when people remember his life, his words, and the importance of justice and peace. Many people know Martin Luther King Jr. from his famous speech that begins with the words, "I have a dream." But the story is bigger than one speech. It is about years of hard work, peaceful protests, danger, and hope. In this series, we will look at the difficult years before the movement grew strong, the key events that changed laws, and how the holiday became part of American life. We tell the story in simple, clear English so everyone can follow and learn. This is *** Part 1, A Divided Country and the Early Fight for Change ***, How unfair rules began, why people suffered, and how small steps led to a big movement. Sit back, relax, and travel back in time with us to understand this important part of history. After the American Civil War ended in 1865, slavery was over. The 13th Amendment made it illegal to own people. The 14th Amendment said everyone born in the United States was a citizen with equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment gave black men the right to vote. These changes were very important. But many white people in the southern states did not want equality. They made new rules to keep black people separate and without the same rights. These rules were called Jim Crow laws. They started in the late 1800s and continued for many years. The laws said black people and white people must use different schools, different restaurants, different water fountains, different bathrooms, and different seats on buses and trains. Signs said whites only or colored. Black schools often had fewer books, old buildings, and less money. Black people could not vote in many places because of special tests, poll taxes, or threats of violence. If they tried to register to vote, they sometimes lost their jobs or faced danger. This system of separation was called segregation. The Supreme Court said in 1896, in a case called Plessy v. Ferguson, that separate but equal was okay. But in real life, things for black people were never equal. They were kept poor, without good jobs, and without the same chances to succeed. In the early 1900s, some people began to speak against these laws. Groups like the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, started in 1909, worked in courts to fight unfair rules. They won some small cases, but change was very slow. Many black families moved from the South to northern cities during the Great Migration, looking for better jobs and safety. Even in the North, they faced discrimination in housing and work. World War II, 1939–1945, brought more attention to the problem. Black soldiers fought bravely for freedom overseas, but when they came home, they still could not sit where they wanted on a bus or eat in many restaurants. People asked, how can America fight for freedom in other countries while denying it at home? After the war, small acts of courage started to grow. In 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, a woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a city bus to a white person. The law said she must move to the back. She said no. Police arrested her. This one quiet act started something big. Black leaders in Montgomery asked people to boycott the buses. That means no one would ride the buses until the rules changed. The boycott lasted 381 days. People walked long distances to work or shared rides in cars. Churches and homes became meeting places. During this time, a young pastor named Martin Luther King Jr. became the leader of the boycott group. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. His father was also a pastor. He grew up in a loving family and studied hard. He went to college at age 15 and later earned a doctorate degree in theology. He believed strongly in nonviolence. He read the words of Jesus, Mahatma Gandhi from India, and other teachers who showed that peaceful protest could change unfair systems. King said love and truth were stronger than hate and violence. During the boycott, King spoke to large crowds. He told them to stay calm even when people were angry or violent. Houses were bombed. People received threats, but the boycotters did not give up. In 1956, the Supreme Court said bus segregation was against the Constitution. The boycott won. Black people could now sit anywhere on the buses. This victory gave hope to many. In 1957, King and other leaders started the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. The group wanted to use peaceful protests across the South to end segregation. Churches became important centers because many black pastors joined the movement. In 1960, college students began sit-ins. They sat at lunch counters marked whites only and asked to be served. When they were refused, they stayed quietly. More students joined. Sit-ins spread to many cities. Sometimes police arrested them. Sometimes angry people poured food on them or hit them. But the students did not fight back. Their courage brought attention to the unfair laws. In 1961, another group called Freedom Riders tested new rules about buses that traveled between states. The Supreme Court said interstate buses could not have segregated seating. Freedom Riders, both black and white, rode buses together through the South. In some places, mobs attacked the buses and beat the riders. The violence shocked the country. The federal government had to step in to protect them. These early actions showed that peaceful protest could work. They also showed the deep anger of those who wanted to keep segregation. Many people were hurt or arrested, some lost their lives, but the movement grew stronger. By the early 1960s, the civil rights movement was becoming national news. Television showed peaceful marchers facing dogs, fire hoses, and clubs. People across America watched and asked why this was happening in their country. Support grew. White people, religious groups, students, and workers joined the cause. Martin Luther King Jr. became the most well-known voice. He traveled to many cities, gave speeches, met with presidents, and went to jail many times. In 1963, he helped plan a big march in Washington, D.C. Hundreds of thousands of people came to ask for jobs, freedom, and equal rights. On August 28, 1963, standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial, King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. He spoke about his hope for a future where people are judged by their character, not the color of their skin. He spoke of children of different races holding hands as brothers and sisters. The speech touched hearts around the world. The march and the speech brought more attention. In 1964, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. This law made it illegal to discriminate in public places, schools, and jobs because of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It was a major step forward. 1 year later, in 1965, another important law came, the Voting Rights Act. It ended special tests and taxes that stopped black people from voting. After this law, many more black citizens registered and voted. These laws did not end all problems. Many people still faced unfair treatment, but they changed the country in big ways. The movement showed that peaceful action, strong words, and working together could bring justice. This is only the beginning of the story. In Part 2, we will look at later years of the movement, more challenges Dr. King faced, his last days, and how Martin Luther King Jr. Day became a national holiday. We will also see how people today continue his work. As the civil rights movement moved into the mid-1960s, the work became harder and more dangerous. New laws had passed, but many places in the South still refused to follow them. Schools, restaurants, and voting offices remained closed to black people in some areas. Violence against peaceful protesters continued. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other leaders knew they needed to keep the pressure on. They planned more marches, more speeches, and more nonviolent actions to show the country that change was not finished. One of the biggest challenges came in 1965 in Selma, Alabama. Black people there tried to register to vote, but local officials made it almost impossible. They used long lines, confusing tests, and threats. In February 1965, a young man named Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot and killed by a state trooper while trying to protect his mother and grandfather during a peaceful night march. His death made people very angry. Leaders decided to march from Selma to Montgomery, the state capital, to ask the governor for fair voting rights. The march would be 54 miles long. On March 7, 1965, a day now called Bloody Sunday, about 600 marchers started walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. State troopers and local police waited on the other side. They wore helmets and carried clubs and tear gas. When the marchers reached the top of the bridge, the police told them to turn back. The marchers stopped and knelt to pray. Then the police attacked. They beat people with clubs, threw tear gas, and rode horses into the crowd. Television cameras showed the whole country what happened. People saw peaceful marchers, men, women, and children, being hurt badly. John Lewis, a young leader who later became a congressman, had his skull broken. Many were injured. The pictures shocked America. 2 weeks later, after federal court allowed it, a larger march began. This time, thousands joined, including white supporters, religious leaders, and people from all over the country. President Lyndon Johnson sent federal protection. The marchers walked for 5 days. They sang freedom songs the whole way. On March 25, they reached Montgomery. A huge crowd waited. Dr. King gave a powerful speech. He talked about how the march showed the strength of nonviolence and how the movement would keep going until full equality came. A few months later, in August 1965, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. This law stopped literacy tests, poll taxes, and other tricks that kept black people from voting. Federal workers went to the South to help people register. In a short time, hundreds of thousands of new black voters signed up. Black candidates began to win elections for local offices, state positions, and Congress. After 1965, Dr. King turned his attention to other problems. He saw that many black people in northern cities still lived in poor neighborhoods with bad housing, few jobs, and low pay. Segregation in the North was not always by law, but it happened because of unfair practices in housing, schools, and work. In 1966, King moved to Chicago to work on open housing, the right for black families to buy or rent homes in any neighborhood. Marches in white neighborhoods brought angry crowds who threw rocks and bottles. King said he had never seen such hate before. The work was hard, and results came slowly. In 1967, King spoke against the Vietnam War. He said the money spent on war should help poor people at home. This speech made some people angry. They said he should only talk about civil rights. But King believed peace and justice were connected. He planned a new campaign called the Poor People's Campaign. He wanted to bring poor people of all races, black, white, Hispanic, Native American, to Washington, D.C. to ask for better jobs, housing, and education. In early 1968, King went to Memphis, Tennessee to support striking sanitation workers. These workers, mostly black, wanted better pay, safer conditions, and the right to form a union. On March 28, a march in Memphis turned violent when some young people broke windows. King was very upset. He wanted to try again with a peaceful march. On April 3, 1968, King gave a speech at a church in Memphis. He talked about the strike and said he had seen the promised land. He said, "I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." Many people later remembered these words as if he knew what was coming. The next day, April 4, 1968, while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed. He was 39 years old. The news spread fast. Cities across the country filled with sadness and anger. Riots happened in more than 100 places. Many buildings burned. National Guard soldiers were sent to keep order. But many people also gathered in churches to pray and sing. The man who shot King was James Earl Ray. He was arrested later and sentenced to prison. To this day, some questions remain about the shooting, but most people accept that Ray acted alone. After King's death, the Poor People's Campaign continued. Thousands went to Washington and built a camp called Resurrection City. They stayed for weeks to ask for help for poor people. The camp ended after heavy rain and some problems, but the message stayed. In the years after King's death, the civil rights movement continued in new ways. More black people won elections. Schools became more mixed. Jobs opened to more people. Groups like the Black Panthers worked in different ways, focusing on community programs and self-defense. Other leaders, such as Malcolm X, who was killed in 1965, Coretta Scott King, Jesse Jackson, and many others carried the work forward. In 1983, after many years of requests, President Ronald Reagan signed a law making the third Monday in January a national holiday in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. The first official King holiday was in 1986. Not every state accepted it right away. Some states combined it with other holidays or waited many years. By 2000, all 50 states observed the day. Today, Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federal holiday. Schools and government offices close. Many communities hold parades, marches, speeches, and service projects. People volunteer to clean parks, help neighbors, or work in food banks. The day is called a National Day of Service because it asks everyone to follow King's example of helping others. The holiday reminds people of King's message: nonviolence, love for all, and the belief that people can change society through peaceful action. His words from the "I Have a Dream" speech are still read and heard every year. Schools teach about the civil rights movement. Museums and parks keep the history alive. The fight for equality did not end with King. New challenges came: unfair treatment in the justice system, differences in education and wealth, and other problems. But the laws he helped pass and the courage he showed still guide people today. This is the full story of Martin Luther King Jr. Day and the Civil Rights Movement, a story of pain, bravery, hope, and change. It shows what can happen when people work together for justice. Thank you for listening to both parts. We hope this helps you understand the importance of this holiday and the man it honors.